Hello everyone, my name is Robin and welcome to my installment of the One Magical Scene video essay series for the Summer of RWBY fan event. Summer of RWBY is a month-long online event of live streams and pre-recorded videos celebrating the show while showcasing the creative aspect of the RWBY fandom. As for the One Magical Scene series, its main goal is to gather people together to each share their appreciation for one particularly magical scene from RWBY proper. So myself and other creators have each made our own video essays, and they're all linked in one final playlist in the description below if you'd like to check them out. And if you'd like to contribute, you are still welcome to whenever you happen to see this. But for my part, I knew that my magical scene had to be the final scene of Volume 4. I have watched RWBY ever since it began in 2013. I have followed the show and its production through all of that time, and so for various reasons, Volume 4 has been very special to me ever since it aired. When it first aired, it had a rocky reception though. It came off of the action-packed Volume 3 with a much slower pace to coincide with becoming much more character-driven. It juggled 6 entirely separate new narrative arcs while being anything but confined to Beacon Academy. It had a drastic change in art style. It was much better watched in full than episodically week to week. All of those things were a departure from the RWBY that fans knew. And yet, I knew why they mattered from the get-go. Yes, Volume 4 was different. And Miles Luna has owned up to the fact since then that the writing was too ambitious for its production's own good. But it was so much more than that. Since then, I've seen so many people warm up to Volume 4 after going back to it years later. With the benefit of hindsight, it's a lot easier to see how Volume 4, but more specifically its final scene, embody what had always been a core tenet of the show. Keep moving forward. Beacon fell. Each focal character had some form of internal conflict that questioned how they would move forward from that tragedy. That came more easily for some characters than others, until they all set their sights on Haven Academy in some form or another. The final scene of the volume contextualizes the whole thing. It does not recontextualize it. There are no earth-shattering revelations at the end. Each character arc was more or less wrapped in the previous episode, except for Team Rangers. But once Team Ranger defeats the Knucklevi, their framing as the last loose end with a full finale episode dedicated to tying it up reminds you that they are the main narrative arc. And tie it all up, it does. We start with the airship ride to Mistral.
RWBY.
We made it, Uncle Crow.
RWBY's words follow into Ren and Nora sharing a moment to close out their arc. A wonderful piano leitmotif of Boop transitions into the new song, Home. And so from the moment that they notice Mistral until the very end of the episode, there is a piano in the score that is weaving all of these scenes together. And I will get back to the music later. I love it, I have so much to say about it, but first, finally able to rest at the end of her journey, RWBY takes a moment to set Crescent Rose on the bed and check on Crow before sitting down to open her heart to Yang in a letter. From here on, we see the other character arcs wrap up with neat little bows, one after the other after the other. There is an incredible harmony at play as RWBY's narration coincides with each of them. Everything RWBY says is true for her own arc, her own reflections, as well as the character shown on screen in that moment. Weiss hires a pilot to go to Winter and Mistral as RWBY notes how every step takes you further toward an unknown and terrible horizon. Blake studies the violent White Fang flag as RWBY emphasizes the idea of spiraling because of how bad things can get. As we see Yang, RWBY levels with her that bad things do happen, despite where their headspaces were when Yang said it initially. And a personal favorite moment of mine, RWBY is literally framed as the next generation of Team Stark. Jean, Ren, and Nora mourn together with a focus on the need to move forward through grief. The whole montage changes to reflect that, and with a motif of cold playing in the background. At that point, the uncertain tone changes to a more hopeful one. Weiss, Blake, and Yang's scenes focus on their newfound resolves. Oscar is here. They are each ready to fight for a better tomorrow. From there, a sinister turn. The Albanes maintain their control over Ilya, who would still gain everything she could from her sorrow. And RWBY is more correct than she knows when she says every day feels like a struggle against an impossible monster they could never hope to beat. But they have to try. And RWBY finishes her spiraling, changing her words to focus on the people still with her instead of dwelling on those she has lost. And finally, the volume draws to a close in Lionheart's office, where it seems like, at least for the moment, the headmaster really will help them turn things around. But of course, things are never that easy. This scene had a lot to accomplish. Again, most character arcs were more or less resolved in the previous episode, but RWBY's stood as the main one. With RWBY's letter, we're now able to see each arc through the best lens. There is a harmony between her words and the visuals, and that harmony is reinforced through actual music as well. The musical score, No Safe Haven Part 2. This is my personal favorite musical score in all of RWBY. As the words and visuals play out, the music is there to reinforce them every step of the way. The composer, Alex Abraham, has become famous within the fandom for his use of musical themes, or leitmotifs, to add more depth to the scene. They are a powerful tool. As the scene progresses, several different musical themes come and go as well to match it, starting with Boop for Ren and Nora. Then to This Life Is Mine for Weiss. From Shadows for Blake. Cold. Cinder's theme. And ending on Let's Just Live. And it's all arranged with the same instruments, relatively the same tempo, easing in and out as it goes. Longtime viewers know just how much I love RWBY's musical score. I have a couple different videos that you could check out, link in the description below, but believe me when I say that this track is the reason why I fell in love with RWBY's music in the first place, as well as just narratively driven music as a whole. I watched the scene with just the music, and it was nothing short of a transcendent experience for me. To watch a scene and hear, oh wait, that's This Life Is Mine, that's From Shadows, that's Cold, that's Let's Just Live. To have all of these different musical themes that have been built up over the course of years, now contributing to the payoff of a character, as I said, it was transcendent. Because then it became about a lot more than just the music. Suddenly, it's about what has happened to the tempo of the theme. What does the instrumentation tell us? Is it in a minor key? Is something lingering about the beat? Now all of these questions tie directly back to the character in question, more so than they would have otherwise. The intent behind the musical choices is clear. I am not a music expert. I call myself a filthy casual at best in many pursuits, including musical appreciation, but I know how it makes me feel. And that's the point of it. The score, No Safe Haven Part 2, is a key component in the catharsis of the volume, the release of tension of all of the unknowns that were brought forth throughout. To end on characters' themes is a fantastic choice. Volume 9 was not the first to do it, though it had great effect there too. And so I will shift to talking about that now. How does this scene in Volume 4 fit into Ruby Rose's overall progression as a character, from where she started in Volume 1, leading into this scene in Volume 4, and then eventually how that informs all the way up through Volume 9. RWBY always wanted to be the hero like the role models that she looked up to. In Volume 1, Ozpin gives her advice on being a leader, and she internalizes it the wrong way.
Being a team leader isn't just a title you carry into battle, but a badge you wear constantly. If you are not always performing at your absolute best, then what reason do you give others to follow you?
You're a leader now, Jean. You're not allowed to be a failure because it's not just about you anymore. You've got a team now, Jean. And if we fail, then we'll just be bringing them down with us. We have to put our teammates first and ourselves second.
That was also plainly bad advice. It's not the best thing to tell a 15-year-old who feels she has to prove herself. So she lives by that line. She believes being the best you can be means sacrificing your personal needs for others. She always puts herself second and never prioritizes herself. After the fall of Beacon, in Volume 4, we see a Ruby Rose who tries desperately to be the light of hope for others, to be steadfast. And it more or less works out in Ruby's favor, especially with this final scene, because things are only just getting started. Volume 4 was only the first hurdle, but it's still the same story. Folks like Lindsay Jones, her voice actor, could see the issues with that. It seemed that ever since Volume 4, Lindsay had mentioned in one interview or another that they wanted RWBY to reach a breaking point.
It's gonna sound terrible, but I really want RWBY to hit a moment of complete break where she finally decides, like, I can't physically move forward or emotionally move forward. We kind of saw a little bit of that with Yang at the end of Volume 3, which again, she was very happy-go-lucky, and then we reached this point where she said, I can't progress anymore. I have to go into this introspective moment. I kind of want that for RWBY too. I want her team to kind of like build her up again as opposed to the opposite.
And they said in the World of RWBY companion book that was released after Volume 6 that RWBY compartmentalizing and internalizing her grief is what might eventually destroy her. RWBY deals with that burden greatly in Volume 4, though it works out in the end. For a time, she appears to have a flat character arc, one where she doesn't change, but she allows the world around her to. And Oscar and Ozpin even mention that in Volume 5, while adding a very important detail.
This must be really hard on her too.
It most assuredly is.
It is very hard for her, and RWBY reaches that boiling point in Volumes 8 and 9. And in her solitude and self, she is finally afforded the time to look inward and recognize the toxic mentalities that she was breaking under for what they are. After Volume 9, we have the benefit of hindsight for all of RWBY's development, and we can see just how much was set up over the years until all of the worthwhile payoff that Volume 9 brings. Even with the catharsis, the relief of Team Ranger making it to Mistral, RWBY is still under pressure. She still cries. In writing her letter to Yang, she still feels the need to prove herself to the people that she wants to lead, to the people that she wants to, in turn, be a role model for. Even before watching Volume 4, I always had faith in what it set out to do: tell personal stories. And I've always been interested in RWBY for the character work first and foremost. So the dip in pacing after Volume 3 felt incredibly natural to me. And of course, as I said, it had its fair share of faults. There are so many characters and so little screen time to go around. A lot ended up on the cutting room floor at some point or another to make it work. The most famous arguably being the Apathy Grim. This volume was written with the apathy in mind instead of the Knuckle-V in Ren's backstory. And it is so interesting to watch back knowing that.
Sometimes the worst action to take is taking no action at all. Take action, son.
Volume 4's final scene is such a wonderful marriage of script and screen. Maybe it's the editor in me, but seeing all of the different characters come up on screen while RWBY talks about them, the tone shifting from uncertain to hopeful, and all of the music there to back it up and weave in and out every step of the way, even if only on a technical level, it is still such a well-crafted scene and always so satisfying to rewatch, to have it contextualize the various character arcs while looking toward the future. Volume 4 was still in the early stages for RWBY's character development, but after Volume 9 concluded with RWBY's moment, we finally have the payoff that its final scene helped build. And so for all of those reasons, the final scene of Volume 4 stands out as one magical scene for me. But if I didn't choose that scene, what others might I have chosen to make this video about? Volume 3, Chapter 8. Pyrrha and John's heart-to-heart fails in gut-wrenching fashion. It was a much-needed slow moment in an incredibly stressful volume. It had the highest highs for Pyrrha and John's relationship, and then followed immediately by the lowest lows. Despite being animated in Poser, the animation quality is genuinely incredible, and the voice acting is equally so. Volume 4, Chapter 4. Raven gives Crow a surprise visit. They share intel alongside touchy subjects. As a viewer, we knew their relationship was tense, but this was phenomenally well-crafted tension. There's intel, but also pointed jabs at the same time. It was a solid way to introduce Crow and Raven's relationship. It doesn't hold the audience's hand. It kind of makes you work to understand it. It may take a little bit more than one watch, and Raven's Spring Maiden subplot was set up a whole volume in advance. And lastly, Volume 7, Chapter 13, Ozpin's return as various characters reckon with their innermost fears. You might as well take everything I've said about Volume 4's final scene and then just apply it directly to this one, as for why I appreciate it. A character narrating over an intense moment that reaches catharsis, multiple character arcs coming together and paying off via the narrator's words, and that's whether we're talking about Ozpin, Oscar, Ironwood, Penny, Winter, and of course the wonderful score music and a song that weave it all together. I genuinely almost picked the final scene of Volume 7 for this video. In some ways, it's even better than Volume 4's final scene, but I would say that it's more accurate to say that it just has its own strengths. The intensity is a lot more engaging, Ozpin's monologue holds different weight from RWBY's, but I am simply too fond of Volume 4. And that's that. One magical scene of RWBY as told by yours truly. Please check the playlist in the description over time as more YouTube creators make their own video essays on one magical scene. If you got this far in the video, chances are you enjoyed it and maybe even want to contribute a similar video essay yourself. It's not too late to do so. This series is a very informal, loose collaboration. You're more than welcome to make your own video essay so long as it is in the spirit of things. And as long as you contact me about it, I will include it in that playlist. And follow the Summer of RWBY online events as various talented people in the community showcase their own creations that go far beyond the scope of video essays, whether we're talking fan games, audio dramas, live stream panels on various topics, etc. And lastly, what is your one magical scene from RWBY proper? What is one scene that you feel nobody appreciates to the extent that you do? Sound off in the comments below. And on a more personal note, this has been something of a last hurrah for my YouTube channel. I haven't been active and I certainly haven't been making YouTube video essays in quite some time. But I've had this idea on the back burner for literal years, and there's no better time to make it with RWBY's incredibly uncertain future. But whatever happens, I will be as active as a content creator as RWBY itself is. For now, I am pretty hopeful. But with that being said, please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel so that we can see what the future holds together next time. I'm Robin Rising. Have a good one.